As Victoria's outbreak climbed by 473 cases, the state received the news it didn't need.
There are now 31 cases linked to the Fitzroy Community School in Melbourne's inner north.
The school had ignored public health orders, allowing kids to continue attending during lockdown.
Primary-age children have a strong resilience to COVID, but they may not have a strong resilience to the upbringing being inflicted on them at the moment.
This school has some history when it comes to sailing pretty close to Chief Health Officer orders.
We are not lunatic fringe.
Queensland's confident it has its own school cluster under control, with just 2 cases today after a 13-year-old tested positive on Friday.
We're not concerned because they have been in their home isolation.
The Sunshine State has today reopened its border bubble with New South Wales, allowing travel for essential workers and students in select areas, provided they've had at least 1 vaccine dose.
12 to 15-year-olds, Pfizer is available at GPs, and from next week, Moderna will be available at pharmacists for young children aged between 12 and 15.
Just 1 day after ending her daily briefings, the Premier was back in front of the cameras, warning forthcoming freedoms won't be available for all.
Don't assume that at 80% double dose vaccination, that unvaccinated people are going to have all those freedoms.
Berejiklian also took fire on a new front today. The Health Department accused of waiting 2 whole days to recommend a citywide lockdown when they discovered the cluster triggered by the super spreader party in the southwest was out of control.
Why did you wait between the 24th and the 26th lockdown?
Look, these are decisions we took based on the health advice.
That cluster blamed for the outbreak that's pushed the state's healthcare system to breaking point. A problem for the states, according to a relieved-sounding Deputy PM.
The states run the health system, not federal government. We don't own a hospital anymore, thank God. That is their job.
OK. And it's a job getting tougher by the day. Joining us now is epidemiologist Professor Tony Blakely. Tony, what does the Melbourne school outbreak tell us about the risk of schools reopening more broadly?
Well, it tells you that kids can spread the disease. It's as simple as that. But it has quite major implications for us because in Victoria and in New South Wales, we'd love to give the kids back to school, but it's going to fuel the transmission somewhat. And so we need to get control of our case numbers at the moment so that we can have headroom to send the kids back to school on the 4th of October in Victoria and I believe a week later in New South Wales. So this is quite a challenge for us, is how do we get the kids back to school and not fuel transmission too much?
Well, so that takes us to vaccination. I know that vaccines are theoretically available now for children over the age of 12, although we're hearing a lot of parents in Sydney are really, really struggling to get an appointment for their kids. Is that, or how big a problem is that?
Well, maybe a bit of a chill pill. They'll still be there in a couple of weeks' time. I think New South Wales should be celebrating how much vaccine they've got into arms, particularly in the high-risk suburbs. It's great. But, yeah, let's get the kids vaccinated, but there won't be enough vaccine available this week. But coming up in the next couple of weeks is not a flood, but a nice flow of mRNA vaccines coming in. We will get those children aged 12 to 16 vaccinated. So hang in there. It'll be available soon.
I wonder how important the vaccination of kids is, actually, and how dangerous the disease is for them. Separate from the idea of spread, but just for them. Because I note that the British equivalent of ATAGI basically advised the British government don't bother vaccinating kids over 12 because the risk of the disease is really low and so it's just not worth doing. We've taken a different track, but what does that tell us?
Well, OK, so I don't necessarily agree with that UK advice, but it was premised on the idea that kids don't get too serious an illness. That's true, but there will still be some kids, like the 3 kids who were in ICU in New South Wales a matter of days ago with the COVID infection, and you can still get some worryingly long COVID amongst children. But the bottom line here is that it's better for a child to be vaccinated and not get COVID than it is to be vaccinated and take the very, very, very small risk of being vaccinated. For the child, vaccination is a net gain. But for the community, it's a big gain because by dampening that transmission in schools, it really helps us as an entire community open up.
Tony, just on the New South Wales outbreak, evidence today that the New South Wales Health Department waited 2 days to advise the government to shut down after that Hoxton super spreader party. How crucial has that 2 days become, do you think?
Well, hard to know. You're probably used to that with most answers with COVID. But nevertheless, with that event, it occurred about 3 to 4 days after we knew about the limousine driver, and then a few days after that, so about a week after the limousine driver, there was that 24 to 48 hour window where there could have been earlier action taken to lock down. Now, I'm not privy to all the contact tracing data in New South Wales, but there's a small possibility that having locked down that bit earlier, it might have stopped some of the spread and even all of the spread in New South Wales, but probably not. The reality here is this is about the politics, and it's important politics. I'm not dismissing it, and that this is evidence that the government in New South Wales probably hasn't been listening to the health advice, which we all suspect, and this is a parliamentary inquiry looking for the evidence of the same.
Tony, you mentioned just before that some people should take a chill pill. Who manufactured that chill pill? We need to know, is it a Pfizer chill pill or an AZ?
Side effects?
Yes. Is this on the table?
ATAGI approved?
It was probably somebody in New Zealand with the patent, I'd imagine, and we just let it go, and somebody else is making the money off it, I would imagine. Yeah.
That's the correct arrangement, Tony. Thank you very much for speaking to us.
Good night. Hope that was useful.
From expert opinions to in-depth analysis and reporting, the Project YouTube brings you the biggest stories from Australia and around the globe. Hit the subscribe button now for news delivered straight to your feed.